Hey, Wellness Walker, there are some paths in the walk of life that, even though it looks dark and cold, you must explore. But instead of following those often intuitive messages as opportunities for growth, you associate it to fear. The fear of failure because you cannot see the next move. The fear of rejection because you're not feeling secure. The fear of not being enough because you're not hearing others reaffirm the sentiment. Yes, you miss those big opportunities for growth that are just beneath the surface of what is often read as fear. But fear is more than a word, less of a trigger, sometimes a warning, and often a message for growth. It is a quiet messenger in disguise. It warns, yes, this is true. But more often, it invites you to face everything and rise, free every authentic response, and fearlessly embrace all risk. Overlooking the messages fear delivers in the walk of life leads you to overlook your specific chances to grow. If this is resonating with you, stay tuned because today's Pep Talk Walk is inspired to help you step through fear.
Full potential.
Maybe it's failure. Maybe it's rejection. Maybe it's a deep belief that you're not enough. Whatever it is that brought you here on today's Pep Talk Walk, know this. Real growth begins when you choose to step through fear, not around it. And it's important to step through fear at your own pace, not at the pace of others. If you listened to last week's episode, Set a Pace, I hope that you're putting those pace strategies into action because there are practical ways to build your strength so they may also help you step through fear. If you missed it, check it out. Now, when you step through fear on the walk of life, you're not denying it. You're acknowledging fear as a natural part of the journey. Stepping through fear means knowing that the courage won't always feel obvious or loud, but you choose to move forward anyway. And in doing so, you open yourself up to powerful life lessons about failure, rejection, control, time, money, and even mortality. Yes, fear is a real emotional response to a perceived danger. But that's not the whole story. When you look deeper, fear becomes more than a feeling. It becomes a message, a direction, an acronym for growth. Allow me to explain. Fear is a signal triggered by your thoughts and perceptions, and it often carries these messages meant to guide you through certain challenges. When fear shows up, it's not there to stop you, it's there to show you where your growth is needed. And you can shift the meaning of fear by using powerful transformative messages that help you keep moving forward. Today, I want to talk about 3 of those messages and how you can use them to step through fear. Now, let's talk about each one.
Feels like self-love.
The first message is to face everything and rise. However, the first thing most of us tend to do when confronting fear is hesitate or avoid it, either by pausing, overthinking, deflecting, or retreating altogether. When something you're afraid of crosses your mind, don't run from it, don't silence it or push it away. Look at the thought associated to the fear. Really examine it and then use the letters in the word fear as your reminder to face everything and rise. Then do just that. Turn the thought that triggered your fear into a passage for growth. It may seem counterintuitive, but fear isn't just an obstacle. It's a signal, a testing ground. It shows up right where your growth is calling you. Everything you've done up to this point in life, the person you've become has brought you as far as it can bring you. And that is something to honor. But if you don't grow beyond the point you've accomplished, you'll limit your access to other paths in the walk of life. Some paths require more. And that's not to say that you're not enough. That's to say you never stop growing. If you want to keep growing, you'll need to stretch yourself into new territory. That new territory, that next level of growth, isn't just about doing more. It's about becoming more physically, emotionally, and spiritually. You see, fear marks the edge of your current capacity. Growth begins when you step through it. I remember the moment I chose to resign from my job of 7 years to pursue a career as an independent consultant. I was super excited and super afraid, but I did it anyway. My first real test was reaching out, networking, and landing my first contract that felt manageable. I had the skills, but booking clients and committing to the dates, that's when the fears started to get a little louder. I was stepping away from a steady paycheck and a predictable routine, which made me feel very comfortable. It was hard to do. A lot of fear started bubbling up. This wasn't just a job change. It was a leap into the unknown. The turning point came when I had to face a choice. It was two paths. I had to choose the path to stay where I felt safe but unfulfilled, or choose the path where I could face everything and rise. I chose growth over comfort, uncertainty over security. The fear, I wish I could tell you, disappeared. It didn't, but I moved through it. And that one step changed everything. Here's what I learned. When I stepped through fear, physically, I learned to notice what fueled my best work and what drained me. That's when I realized time management wasn't enough. I needed to manage my energy. So I built routines that align with my natural rhythms, helping me stay focused and effective and energized. Emotionally, I learned how to navigate uncertainty, making a space for both fear and excitement at the same time so that I could keep showing up. The imposter syndrome started to lose its grip in the moments that I chose to show up for myself and continue taking action. That ability to leave a stable job forced me to face self-doubt and build up my emotional resilience. Spiritually, I learned to trust the process, even when outcomes weren't guaranteed. Leaving the familiar path invited deeper reflection. What do I really want to create? What am I called to do? Trusting in an inner nudge over external security became a spiritual act for me, one that was rooted in faith, surrender, and alignment with purpose. Now, these weren't just insights. They were tools that helped me go after bigger and bolder goals, because when you step through fear instead of avoiding it, you collect more than courage. You gain wisdom, new ways of thinking, being, and feeling. And if you try to go around fear, well, you'll likely find yourself stuck revisiting the same frustrations repeatedly. And it's basically you're going down the same path over and over again, and you won't make a change until you get bored with it. The lessons fear taught me became so valuable, I started intentionally keeping track of my fears, because I realized they weren't just signals to stop. They were messages inviting me to grow, to face everything and rise. So if you're standing at your own crossroads, let my story be a reminder. Fear may show up, but it doesn't have to stop you. Growth lives on the other side. If you're facing something fearful on your walk of life right now, stop yourself and ask, what can I do right now to step through fear? In other words, how will you face everything and rise? While you're thinking about that, feel free to pause and resume when you're ready. Now, let's move on to the second message we can leverage from fear. The second message is to free every authentic response. Did you know the more you avoid fears, the stronger fears become? When you do this, over time, your brain learns to associate avoidance with safety, which can be detrimental to your personal growth journey if you never learn to face every authentic response. When fear shows up, don't slam the door on it. Invite it in. Let it speak and get real with yourself. Name it, face it, then dig deeper. What old story gave that fear its power? What truth do you need to learn or unlearn? That is your turning point. From there, rise into awareness and free every authentic response. Turn that thought that triggered your fear into a message of self-awareness. Although it may feel impossible while confronting the fear, remember, you can set a pace to step through fear. After all, fear is not only your testing ground for growth, but also a signal that something matters to you, like a goal, relationship, or purpose. It essentially points you towards what's worth growing into. And since most fears are conditioned responses, They can be rewired through awareness and exposure. That means they can be learned and unlearned. I used to fear what I said wouldn't be understood or worse, dismissed. I'd overthink every word, filtering my thoughts so much that I often said nothing at all. By the time I was ready to speak, the moment had passed, the conversation moved on, and so did the chance to connect. It wasn't funny then, though I can laugh now. That fear kept me silent. It cost me moments of relevance, connection, and confidence. Here's what I learned. Physically, the practice of presence is critical. I learned that staying physically engaged in a moment kept me so connected that filtering and overthinking my thoughts became unnecessary. I started responding and connecting more naturally instead of retreating to inner dialogue. Here's what I learned. Physically, the practice of presence is critical. I learned that staying physically engaged in a moment kept me so connected that filtering and overthinking my thoughts became unnecessary. I started responding and connecting more naturally instead of retreating to inner dialogue. Emotionally, I learned how important it is to separate inner reflection from external conversations. Each has its own time, place, and purpose. Overthinking is a form of self-protection, and I realized I was trying to avoid vulnerability, but it only created isolation. Trying to manage both conversations internally and externally while connecting with others is best when you've done the work internally. Spiritually, I learned how to use authenticity as my spiritual practice. Speaking freely became more than a habit, it became an act of honoring my spirit. These coincide with that separation of inner reflection from external conversations I just mentioned, because when you do the internal work, the authentic parts automatically surface, and there is no need to filter or overthink. You show up as who you are. These lessons have fueled my momentum towards bigger, bolder paths in the walk of life. Every time we step through fear, we gain strength, confidence, and the courage to explore new paths on our journey. So, when something unsettling or distressing pops up on your walk of life, stop and ask yourself, what can I do right now to step through fear? In other words, how will you free every authentic response so that you're not teaching your brain to associate avoidance with safety? While you're thinking about that, feel free to pause and resume when you're ready. Now, let's move on to the last message we can leverage from fear.
Feels so soulful.
The third and last message is to fearlessly embrace all risk. It's completely normal for fear to show up right before that moment of growth. And sometimes it creeps in before what seems like a small decision, like asking for a raise or setting a boundary in a relationship or signing up for a certification course or perhaps finally speaking up in a meeting. Those small moments often lead to some of the most powerful turning points in the walk of life. Think about it. Those milestones are packed with hope, potential, and often fear. Not because you're doing something wrong, but because you're stepping into the unknown. Now, yes, some fear is tied to real physical danger, wild predators, natural disasters, high-speed collisions, you get it. Those all require caution and respect. But most everyday fear, well, those are a signal, not a stop sign. It's your body's way of saying, hey, you, pay attention. Something meaningful is unfolding. Do you want to grow? Fear often shows up not when you're failing, but when you're on the verge of something bigger. There was a time when I feared disappointing others, so I overextended myself, doing more than I was asked and more than I needed to, sometimes in cases more than I even wanted to. I was trying to control outcomes, not realizing it was out of fear of being seen one way over another. Back then, being seen as good gave me a sense of worth, but that eventually drained me. That need for validation externally drained me. And I no longer wanted to be good in the eyes of others. I wanted to be good internally. Without meaning to do so, I realized that I had built expectations across relationships that no longer worked for me. And I didn't like it. That discomfort sparked a shift. Instead of letting the fear control me, I redefined it and I fearlessly embrace all risk. That became my new perspective. That allowed me to step through the fear of whatever changes I needed to make. Now, fear surfaced at every step, but I leaned in and listened to fearlessly embrace all risks, which gave me the strength to keep going. And things started changing. I still remember a quiet morning walk that gave me that clarity I needed. I thought back to the times when I spoke up and nothing fell apart. Those times where I pushed back, those moments became markers, reminders that my voice matters. The realization wasn't loud, but it was life-changing. Here's what I learned. Physically, peace is more valuable than praise. Letting go of the need to please improve sleep, digestion, and overall energy. Go get you some. Emotionally, I learned you can rewrite your patterns at any time. You're not bound to old habits. You can start new ones rooted in awareness and compassion. And know that those who try to reroute you back to your old patterns are there to strengthen what you're developing. One or two things will happen. You will either allow them to take you back to those old patterns, or you will internally shift to an extent that it's impossible for anyone to take you back to the patterns that do not work for you. Spiritually, I learned fear can be a sacred teacher. When faced with fear, I found an invitation to grow closer to my truth and who I am. These lessons helped me develop stronger discernment and set boundaries that truly work for me, especially when I learned to step through fear boldly rather than walking around it. You see, stepping through fear, you can evolve existing relationships, meet new people, connect with your inner power. Plenty of growth lies just on the other side when you fearlessly embrace all risk on the walk of life. If you encounter fear that needs to be confronted, stop and ask yourself, what can I do now to step through fear? In other words, where do you want to fearlessly embrace all risk? While you're thinking about that, feel free to pause and resume when you're ready.
Growing, growing, growing.
Wellness walker, you are already braver than you know. You don't need to wait for fear to disappear. No, you just need to trust that you can move with it, through it, and come out stronger on the other side. As you step through fear in those moments of personal growth, may you face everything and rise, knowing that fear is simply a testing ground for growth. Who you are and what you've done has brought you this far. And that's something to be proud of. But to keep moving forward, you'll need to grow in new specific ways. Explore those paths. May you free every authentic response when fear shows up. Don't slam the door on it. Invite it in. Let it speak and get real with yourself. Name it, face it, then dig deeper. May you fearlessly embrace all risks. Remember, it is completely normal for fear to show up right before a moment of growth. And when fear is in your presence, when you feel it, it's really asking you, do you want to grow? If you remember nothing else, remember this. The walk of life may start some doubt, step through fear, and walk it out. That's it for today's Pep Talk Walk, but you keep showing up for yourself. Keep shining your truth. Trust your steps. Trust your timing, even when the path feels unclear. I'll meet you on our next walk for another Pep Talk, ready to remind you of your strength.
Full potential.